Welcome back, everyone. Today we'll be looking at text 4.1. It is a blog. It's a relatively simple one to get us back into it after the holiday. So if you can turn to page, text 4.1 for me. It's A Ride of Two Halves by George Scott. Like I said, it's relatively simple, not too much overbearing context on this one. So it's a blog written by George Scott, the assistant editor of Road Cycling UK. So if you just want to pause and read through before we go through it. So we'll start with purpose then. Pretty generic, pretty nice ones for this. So the most obvious one is it's offering an insight into the excitement and opportunities that cycling can offer. And this one is more specifically when in Spain, when taking part in a cycling training camp. And we'll look at that when we get to context. It's informative, informing his subscribers and followers of the next stages of his cycling journey. Because it's a blog, we can use that kind of language. You can say reader, that is absolutely fine. It's still their audience and they are reading it, but it might be particular subscribers and followers as well. It does, at times, offer opportunities to promote Wheels in Wheels, and that is a ride guide service. So this is the company, essentially, that he's went on this experience with. So we'll talk about that as we go through analysis, but there are some clear bits there that are basically kind of plugging this company. He is seeking to engage with a wider audience. It's not all overly, complicated language about cycling as such. So, it's there for like the newbies, the novices, and it's encouraging them to maybe take up this cycling, as a hobby. And at the same time, he's trying to show the beauty and adventure that is accessible just because of cycling. So that is all there as well. Audience then. So fans or followers of Road Cycling UK, specific followers or subscribers of Scott and his cycling blog. I believe this is like the third entry, so we might already have a kind of a set audience by now. Novices, so those who don't have much experience with cycling. I haven't got a clue and I still understood what was going on. So it's not alienating, it's not putting aside people who don't know much about it. It's quite inclusive and it's basically showing all the things that cycling can do. So it's basically sharing its enthusiasm with everyone. And then on top of that, obviously those who do have an interest in cycling, who are looking to maybe take the next step in their cycling journey. So basically by going abroad, cycling in kind of unknown places. Right, so the mode is a blog. I don't believe we've looked at one as such yet. So it's a blog. It's an abbreviation of weblog. You're probably more familiar with the term vlog, like the video log kind of version. But basically, it's kind of like a diary entry, isn't it? But online for people to follow. And it's normally about a particular topic. So as it says here, it's a personal online journal. It's about their opinions, activities, and experiences on a regular basis. So a blog's not normally done in isolation on its own. It's normally part of a bigger range of blogs. It's offering a personal commentary on a particular topic, so cycling. And the primary purpose is basically to interact with their particular audience. So, it's for particular people. It is normally planned, that would have been edited, particularly because it was on such a prominent kind of cycling website. But again, it's about gaining that relationship with their audience and their followers. And just the final thing I've added there, because it's a term we maybe haven't referenced before, self-referential in nature. In other words, it's referring back to things that they've previously done. And in this case, he refers back to kind of like a previous blog, because this is day 3 of his journey. Topicality then. So what is he actually talking about? So it's day 3 of his training camp. And this is his experience with Wheels in Wheels, this company. So at the start, he starts talking about how exhausted he is and his fellow kind of trainees and cyclists are after a really difficult day of cycling on day 2. So he starts off by saying kind of how tired everyone is. He then starts talking about the journey they went on day 3 in the morning, this collective journey through the flat coastal roads of Majorca, explores the beauty, but then he also talks about how they were all struggling a bit because the wind was strong, etc. And it was just a bit of a challenge. But then he starts talking about how the other cyclists, everyone else in his team, went back to base, they went back to their camp, but him and his instructor James, they decided to obviously take a more challenging route back to base. You know, it's more exciting. They weren't done for the day and they wanted to see more. And then by the end, tired, but he does feel accomplished and driven by the experience that he has just had. Now, context on this one, there's not too much, there's not much too much about him out there at all. Just date-wise, this was first published on the 30th of March 2014, so relatively new. He's an assistant editor of this blog, but since then he has been promoted to editor. He's a passionate cyclist. He's been cycling with this team since 2010, so again, he's not new to this. He's not like a beginner. You know, he's quite good in this field. Now, he does apparently, the context following some research, he is a huge sports fan, and particularly football. So you could say that his actual title, A Ride of Two Halves, could be kind of a bit of a reference there to football, two halves. You get the gist. He has defined himself as a journalist, slightly different to just an editor who kind of goes through things, producing his own work. So actually, he does use these journalist kind of conventions. It's very well structured. It's not just kind of a random blog. And then just the final bit of context, in case I start just talking about wheels in wheels with no explanation. It's basically this company in Spain, Andalusia, I believe it's southern Spain, where it offers cycling training and holiday camps for cyclists. So they actually describe themselves on their website as offering well-proven road ride weeks, the opportunity to hone your skills, enjoy the off-road experience in perfect weather and riding conditions. They've got 3 groups from experts to beginners, and there's support basically for everyone. So just when we talk about audience, this isn't an experience just for like professional, really experienced cyclists. It is, this Wheels and Wheels offers it for everyone. Okay, so just as per usual, just going to go through evidence, terminology, and then make notes on your analysis, which you'll need to do your response this week. Right, beginning then. So obviously you can see that this is an online blog. You can see it through physically how it looks. So that's there. Hyperlinks, like where it says RC UK blogs, George. So it's easily accessible. But more in depth, I guess. So the headline here, it's got ellipsis at the end. So ... builds that sense of tension. It's like also what do you mean as a ride of two halves? So what was the first half like? What was the second half like? Basically creating a sense of anticipation, what happened. And as I said, going through before with contexty stuff, two halves, you could say that alludes to football, and that's maybe, his interest that is just showing itself through here. We then have kind of our byline here, or our subheading really. So if we go here to where it says day 2's mountain ride left most of the group with sore legs ahead of the 3rd day of training camp. So we said before about self-referential language, where it says day 2 and it's referring back to that, it's making it clear that this is a blog which is more than just one, so it's referring to the previous day, and it is a common feature. So I've just put in brackets there, uses Edexcel to signpost back to previous entries. So again, it's like a signpost to the audience to go back and read day 1, day 2 if they haven't already, but also it's part of this ongoing journey and adventure that he's going through. More specifically, you might want to talk about sore legs, just basically showing how challenging and strenuous it has been because it's day 3, and actually how quickly, if it's only day 3 and they're tired already, what a challenging, exciting experience this must be for them. Right, now move to the main bulk of it all. So trouble is, we now had a headwind worthy of the Northern Classics to contend with. So again, you start here, there's a bit of a problem, there's trouble, what's going on here? And he makes this reference to Northern Classics. Now that is an esoteric reference. I'm not familiar with it, or I wasn't. And it is a renowned cycling competition. It's a well-known international cycling competition. So the fact that he puts that in there, maybe that's really appealing to his cycling audience. He's making these references that are very much so, just for those that understand cycling. But but it just shows his enthusiasm through it all. With regards to the actual content of what he's saying, it's basically saying that this is a struggle. He's got personifying this win to show that after a tough day, the previous day, that there's still there's win to compete with. It's just been a bit of a struggle. So this is like the first half of his journey. But then after that, it's quite nice then. He does create this semantic field of like vacations or holidays, if vacation sounds a little bit American. So, the semantic field of, cafe stop, beachfront, tan lines, sun. It's basically showing that it's not all doom and gloom, it's not all painful, this journey. So he's showing that, the training camp is for relaxation in a sense as well, and exploration, getting some downtime. He's basically trying to maybe dismiss the connotations of training camps being laborious and really challenging all the time, and not being enjoyable. So instead, he puts this in here to be like, if you do decide to sign up to Wheels in Wheels, etc., that actually will be a fantastic experience as well. You will get some downtime. Right. So we then 35 miles on the clock, stop for a comfort break, split the group into two, and the majority of riders opting to stay with the lead car and continuing on the original route. So here is basically saying that everyone else decides to go on the normal route back to the camp, whereas everyone else, well, just him and James, who's his guide, they decide to go on a more adventurous kind of route. So just put here majority being the quantifier. It's basically saying that he's different from them, perhaps. He's distinguished himself that they went off on the easier route, but because he's this thrill seeker, it makes him seem a little bit more exciting because he's kind of boastfully suggesting that, he's going to make the most of this experience. He doesn't want to just go on an original route. He's going to be really adventurous. So there's a little bit of a boastful tone there because the majority of everyone else decided to go on the sensible route back. And then just add into that then, so he says, while our ride guide James and I turned right into the hills for a lumpier loop to base. So you've got alliteration there, lumpier loop. You could talk about bilabel plosives or even just consonants with the P sound. But it's meant to create this tone of like excitement, enthusiasm. Lumpier is a comparative as well, showing all the challenge that he's going to go through. It might be a bit of a tumultuous journey. It's going to be up and down, and he's about to embark on this really exciting experience. He also uses the proper noun James to reference his guide. Basically shows this tone of familiarity with him, maybe like they're friends. He feels safe perhaps with having the ride guide there. He probably wouldn't have just went off on his own to do this. But he's kind of proud of himself that him and the guide are going off and taking a more challenging route, as opposed to everyone else who has went on the original easier one. So again, it's that sense of pride in his voice that he's got there. So they wave their goodbyes, etc. And then him and James go into the orange groves to begin a steady drag to the foot of a snaking 2-mile car-free climb. So, got a nice trident list here. It's a snaking 2-mile car-free climb. Now, it shows the challenge. Snaking, obviously, it's a bit dangerous terrain, going in and out, etc. But it shows his lust for adventure. Even though he's tired after the second day, he's actively deciding to go on a more difficult journey here. He's immersing himself in nature. The fact that it's a car-free climb as well shows that he's basically went off the beaten track, and that he is basically one with nature now. And then just adding on to that, so you've got your personification. So the ridge above us by now offering protection from the wind and beautiful views back over the valley for company. So you've got these views kind of being, personified here, showing how the sights and, the experience is all due to cycling in this instance. So he's taken this route, but he's really relishing this particular moment, the beautiful views, they're his company. He couldn't think of anything better. Just not specific to just this paragraph, but it is worth noting, I've just put at the bottom there. You'll notice that the paragraphs are relatively, apart from a couple at the end, quite short. Creates a faster pace, could mimic or structurally demonstrate the speed in which they're making progress. It's quite a fast-paced day, going through this kind of uncertain terrains and this adventure. So it just keeps the pace going. It's not like some long, laborious, horrible experience. It's quite quick. So after a short descent, we took a detour off our detour. This is where it gets all rebellious. You've got your repetition of detour. So you take a detour off a detour. Shows the rebellious nature of them. You know, they don't just go off once, they keep going off the track again and again. It just shows the freedom they're looking for, how spontaneous they are. And they're looking for all these kind of places that maybe other people haven't explored. So again, it's meant to be quite exciting here. Now, this is where we have kind of the explicit reference to the company he is on this experience with. So he talks about James the Ride Guide for Wheels in Wheels. So Wheels in Wheels, proper noun. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with like sponsorship and advertisements, etc. And blogs are known to kind of name drop companies, potentially because the company has paid for this experience, so they have to then kind of review it in a sense. Now, we don't know if that is the case here. They don't explicitly say, because back then they didn't have to say if they were being sponsored, but now they do. You'll even see stuff on like that with Instagram. If they're putting a product on their picture, they have to say it's an advertisement, whereas back in 2014 they didn't. So here it's kind of like a plug for this company. You know, he's name dropping it very clearly. Basically, he's promoting it, signposting of the followers to go and investigate this company, to go and share this exciting experience. So they've now got the wind on our back and clipped along comfortably at 55 kilometres an hour on a rolling road. So here, it's alliteration. There's quite a bit of it. The tone is quite, you know, slow and calm here as they're going downhill, which I imagine is the easiest bit of cycling. So you've got clipped comfortably, rolling road, gradual gradient. It's quite smooth. It's easy. It's not meant to seem really intense. It's really kind of calm and soothing. And then he adds on to that when he says it felt like heaven after the wind restricted progress of the morning. Really nice simile there. So it felt like heaven. It's shown that this second half of their day, because in the first half he was with everyone else and they were having this, you know, wind-stricken day, but now he's off being adventurous and it just seems a lot easier when he's exploring. So you've got that, it's that further ease that is coming across in his voice there. He's showing that, you know, going off the beaten track as such, it's further opportunities, there's more excitement, and basically it's like everything is working with him at the moment. So foreground, the moments of tranquility that can come from cycling. So again, there are good parts, there are bad parts, but it's not always difficult. By now, we're in the middle of nowhere, not entirely sure of the route. Okay, so you've got your adverb at the start there, so by now. Creates this tone of immediacy. It's like this is happening, builds that tension, and it just acts as a nice signpost, like a discourse marker for where they are in their journey at this point. So whilst you could see it as being a bit dangerous and middle of nowhere, they're not sure of the route, you know, that might be scary for some, but he's kind of saying it in like an exciting kind of way. He's enjoying it. It's this sense of being free from being able to explore rural Spain. It's not disturbed by industrialization. They're just embracing the wilderness. And the only people there, you've got a reference there, which I haven't highlighted, you know, a farmer and his herd of goats for company. Could say that's, you know, that's meant to be humorous, basically showing that he is in the proper rural Spain. Then here he explicitly confirms what we've just said, really. He says, but this is what cycling is about, exploring uncharted territory with the wind and sun on your back and the traffic-free road rising. So cycling is about, declarative sentences sometimes can be a bit dull, but he just sounds so matter-of-fact here, it can work quite nicely as a device. So it's very simple. This is the epitome of cycling. This is what it's about. It's very matter of fact. It's about exploring. It's about being free, not just constrained to roads like you would do in a car. Instead, you get to experience all of nature. So yeah, I've just put there, these are the moments that he cherishes the most. Then by saying uncharted territory, it's like this, it connotes discovery and like adventure and explorers, etc. So it's suggesting that he's experienced sites that maybe others will never will, because it's uncharted, no one's been there before. It makes him feel quite special at this point. So then the journey carries on. So after one wrong turn and then another. So you've got to determine there another. It's meant to be quite light-hearted. You know, they keep making some mistakes. Maybe they're taking the wrong turns. They're lacking some direction. But he doesn't seem perturbed by this. In other words, he's not anxious about this. He's not stressed. He's enjoying it. Taking some wrong turns isn't the worst thing. If anything, it adds to the sense of adventure that he's looking for. Then goes on to say into the valley, crossing the bone-dry riverbed and picking our way up the track on the opposite side of the mountainside before the tarmac returned. So I've just put here, there's some juxtaposition here. So you've got the juxtaposition between bone-dry riverbed and mountainsides to tarmac. So you can see that that's nature kind of versus the man-made element of paths, etc. Basically just showing how quick it is to go from being somewhere which is maybe quite man-made to the beautiful kind of wilderness, and it's cycling that has allowed him to access it. So literally just not far, go on a bike ride, there you go, you can experience nature and all of its beauty. Just adding at the end though, where it says the tarmac returned, you could say there's maybe some relief in his voice, because I imagine tarmac is a lot easier to cycle on as opposed to, riverbeds, mountainsides, etc. And he has had a long day apparently. We had the exhausting morning, the exhausting day before, so maybe it's just this final sense of relief that, okay, finally we're back on like smooth ground. So further talk about the ground now, very cyclisty. So you've got your adverbs. So there's a steep ramps with beautifully smooth, freshly laid road surface. So these adverbs are very kind of complimentary of the ground. Again, like I was just saying before, because the ground, the terrain here is not as varied. He is tired. It's going to be a lot flatter. It's not going to be as dangerous. So it's kind of like that sense of relief now that he's got somewhere where it's beautifully smooth ground. And then this is the end now, so it's quite nice. So we've got here, they join the rest of the group for a cold drink after 90 minutes of some of the best riding of the camp so far. So it's basically saying here that in this experience, the one that he hadn't planned, it wasn't on the schedule, this more spontaneous one that he went on with his guide, this was the best riding because it was that sense of freedom he had. So I've just put here, you've got superlative best, it's quite simple. It's just showing that this freedom, this particular bit encapsulates the purpose of cycling. That's what it's about. It's freedom, it's exploration. He seems like loving it. He's thinking this is brilliant. Then you've got the adverbial phrases at the end so far. He's not saying that this is the best riding and then that's it. So he's peaked too soon or anything, not at all. It's this tone of optimism. These two closing words so far, basically saying that he's hoping that as the adventure continues, he's going to have further great riding experiences, further adventure, and that basically read on audience, just make sure you follow the blog, make sure you go to the next one to see if this experience can be beaten. So that's the text covered. So if we just look here then, so your general question will be, how does Scott create a sense of voice when discussing his experience of cycling? You'll have your unseen text have a go at comparing it to. But other than that, if you have any questions, feel free to email me.